Do you remember the chap that used to lean on the gate looking out on Selina Moor? Billy Noy, his name was. We called him Mr Noy, 'cause he was a bit posh. Sweet on Grace Hutchins he was, but their courtship was something else. Loving and respectful, all right, but it was so slow. He farmed up at Pendray. Her father farmed down at Selina. Between was Selina Moor. We don't go there. Then one day, must have been 4 years ago, young Grace went into the moor to look for a lost sheep. But that night, she never came home. And the next day, they found the body. Of course, William Noy was heartbroken, but as cruel months grew into bitter years, he found he could let her memory sleep on all but the quietest nights. He knew she was somewhere he could never go. It was 3 years later. At harvest time, Mr Noy was working south of the moor, down at Barrenhool, helping out his kinsfolk there. The next day they were going to need more hands. It will be the last day of harvest. So William Noy rode round the moor and into St Buryan to recruit more workers, and to invite the parson, the clerk and the sexton to join them at harvest supper, or guldise as we call it here. Now the sexton was important because he was a good fiddler and a good droll-teller too. With that job done, soon after dusk, William left the inn at St Buryan to return to Barrenhool. But that night, there was no sign of him. It was a long, hard day getting the harvest home, but eventually the last stand was cut, the neck was cried, and all was safely gathered in. Everyone sat down to supper, and then the drinking, the singing and dancing began. But when the party ended about daybreak, there was still no sign of Mr Noy. So everyone went out to look for him. But by nightfall, no one had seen any sign of him. Same the next day. But on the third day, in the grey of the morning, we heard a horse neighing and dogs barking out in Selina Moor. We followed the sounds and found a winding path no one had ever seen before. It led through dense thickets, past bogs and pools, to some dry ground, almost an island, and there were Mr Noy's horse and hounds. The beasts led us on, through thorns, furze and brambles. They looked as if they'd been there hundreds of years, till we came to twisted elder trees and the ruins of an old bowjey. The door was choked with brambles, but we pushed inside, and there was Mr Noy on the ground, fast asleep. We shook him, but he was hard to wake. At last he opened his eyes. "What are you doing here?" he said. "You'll be late for harvest supper." He didn't know where he was or what day it was. So we gave him some brandy, put him on his horse, and headed back towards Barrenhool. But when he saw Barrenhool, he said again, "Oh, I'm glad to be back in time for guldise." And when we told him that was 3 days ago, he said, "You're joking." He didn't believe it till he saw the harvest under thatch in the mowhay. So we sat him by the fire and fetched him some breakfast. And what he said was this. On his way back from St Buryan, as the night was clear, he thought he'd take a short cut across the moor, as he often did in the summer. But after a while, Mr Noy found himself in part of the moor he'd never seen before. Everything looked strange. He was scared. He tried to retrace his steps, but couldn't find the way. Eventually he gave up and let the horse take its own course. the horse carried Mr. Noy to a place so thick with trees that he had to dismount and walk. But after wandering for miles, he heard lively music and saw lights glimmering through the trees. He thought he'd reached a farm where they were celebrating harvest home. But then the dogs slunk back and the horse wouldn't go on. Mr. Noy walked towards the lights and came to a meadow, and there were hundreds of people. Some were at tables eating and drinking, others were dancing to the rhythm of a crowdy crawn, played by a beautiful woman dressed in white. She stood on a trestle just beside the house, only a few paces from Mr. Noy. The revellers were all smartly dressed, but to Mr. Noy they seemed to be undersized mortals. And the dancers, they moved so fast he couldn't count how many they were. Mr. Noy noticed that the girl who made the music was more the size of ordinary folk. And when the dance ended, she went into the house, fetched a jug, and went round the tables, topping up the mugs and tankards. Then, as she started to play for another dance, she glanced towards Mr. Noy. Now the music was such fun that Willie Noy was about to join the dancers in a three-handed reel. But the girl gave a look of alarm and motioned with her head for him to hide round the side of the house. And when the dance was over, she signalled to Mr. Noy to follow her. She led to a nearby orchard. In the moonlight she waited for him, and when Willie Noy drew close, he was amazed to see that the girl was Grace Hutchins, the woman he thought to be 3 years buried. She said, "Thank the stars, dear William, that I saw you and stopped you, or you'd be changed into the small people state, just like me." He was about to kiss her. "No," she said, "don't touch me. Don't touch flower. Don't touch fruit." It was eating a plum in this very orchard was my undoing. Let me tell you what happened. People thought that I died out on the moor, but what they buried was a changeling. Then from the clearing voices called, "Grace, Grace, bring us more beer, be quick." "Stay out of sight," said Grace. "I'm the housekeeper to these sprites. I won't be long." And having served at the table, she returned. "My dear William," she said, "I've always loved you more than you ever knew." Let me tell you what happened. I was on the moor one evening looking for a lost sheep. Then over towards Pendray, I heard you calling and whistling to your dogs. I went towards the sound, hoping to meet you, but the ferns were higher than my head. I got lost. I wandered for hours. Then I heard music and headed towards it. I waded a brook and found this lovely orchard. Apples and other fruit hung overhead. It was surrounded with trees and water. There seemed to be no way out. The music was near, but I could see no one. Then in the branches I saw a plum. It shone like gold in the starlight. And by then I was hungry and thirsty, so I plucked it. But the moment I bit it, that plum dissolved to bitter water. It made me faint and fall to the ground. And when I woke, I was surrounded by dozens of small people. They were smiling and happy. They said they needed a tidy girl who could bake and brew and keep their house, nurse the children that they stole. Well, at first I was entranced, but gradually I realized that, to me, their world seemed just illusion. The only thing that was really important to them were the happy memories of when they had lived as mortals many years ago. For a moment, she looked sadly at Mr. Noy. Then she continued, "I'm used to this life now. The small people, they treat me kindly. But though I can't leave this world, I can take the form of a small bird if I wish, and sometimes I fly to Pendray to be near you. I still love you. I always will." Then they heard voices. "Grace, Grace, quick, more beer!" And she hurried into the house to fetch the beer, leaving Mr. Noy alone. "Then," said Mr. Noy, "I remembered. The little people cannot abide any garment turned inside out. I felt in my pocket, and there were my gloves. Quick as a thought, I turned one inside out. With one hand I reached for Grace, with the other I threw the glove among the little people. I reached out. For a moment I touched her hand. Then, in an instant, she and they vanished. There was no house, no gardens, just thickets and a roofless old bowjey. And then I felt a blow on the head, and I knew no more." Mr. Noy stopped speaking then. I didn't know what to believe. But from that harvest onwards, he was a changed man. He talked only about his time in Selina Moor. He thought that every redbreast sparrow or thrush might be the fairy form of his love. That chap that used to lean on the gate, looking out on Selina Moor. Billy Noy was his name, sweet on Grace Hutchins. At dusk, and on moonlit nights, he would gaze over the moor, hoping to meet her. No one's seen him for 3 months now, and where he is, no one knows. Perhaps he died, perhaps he went and found Grace in the fairy house. But that's in Selina Moor. We don't go there.